Doctor.
For more on this, we are joined in the studio by Kelvin Lee. He's Head of Care and Integration at St. Luke's Hospital, which organised the event, and also Dr. Katie Eastman. She's Adjunct Professor at the Antioch University New England Graduate School. Good evening to both of you and welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Dr. Eastman, let's begin with you. What exactly is compassionate care? And explain to us, if you will, how it actually extends to our healthcare workers.
It's a healthcare approach in which healthcare providers make an empathic connection with our patients. And it requires of us that we do self-care and self-awareness so that we understand any issues that we might have that prevent us from making those kinds of connections. So this training at St. Luke's has provided healthcare workers the opportunity to self-reflect on what it's like to be a healthcare worker.
Right.
Kelvin, can you give us a sense of how widely compassionate care is practiced in Singapore? And I mean, from St. Luke's perspective, I imagine that it would be practiced quite a bit, given the sector that it's in.
Well, yeah. I think it varies from individual to individual and from institution to institution. You know, it's not something new to Singapore. I think it's quite commonly known that healthcare professionals extend care beyond boundaries. We tend to bend over backwards in wanting to provide care, and sometimes we forget about ourselves. Mm-hmm. So the key is to remind ourselves that we need to hold space for ourselves. We can't give what we don't have, okay? And so that a lot of that is going on in Singapore, and we want to make sure that the people who are doing it, you know, the staff are protected so that we can go at it in the long run. So it's great that the Ministry of Health has launched its National Mental Health and Wellbeing Strategy, and it's really to help workers and staff look into this space and to be more aware that we need to watch out for ourselves. We need to, that Katie mentioned this morning about having that couple of seconds to take a breath, you know, and then just carry on with it. I think, and that's really important. So it's also good that we're protecting the space with the tripartite framework that was launched by the Tripartite Work Group against abuse and I think prevention of abuse and harassment. That was launched in December of 2023. You know, so it's keeping the workers well so that we can extend this wellness in the people that we're looking to serve.
Kelvin, paint us a picture, if you will, of how that looks in practice when it comes to taking that breath, getting staff to be able to take that breath, and also how it works with the patients as well.
Right. We spoke about that at the conference today, you know, to Katie and the other speakers about how important it is to recognize, firstly, that you need to have that space. And it is intentional. So the intentionality has to be there. The Director General of Health, Professor Kenneth Mak, talked about how important it is to protect the workers, preserve a safe environment, and the legislation that goes with it. The other thing that I'd like to add to that is really being very purposeful in holding that space, you know, and making sure that we're okay, you know, so that we can watch out for people who are not okay. Because a lot of emotions fly in healthcare, you know. I think you guys did a report on it in 2022 that talked about the number of people who had quit the scene because of, you know, just how tough going it was back then. And it's real. It's you know, it's just something that people keep going, you know, because they want to be there to extend help. Right. So for St. Luke's, it's very much about, we practice what we call our CSP model, our clinical, social, and pastoral care model. So we've got all the clinicians, you know, doing their bit to make sure that we extend best clinical care. We've got our social workers and care coordinators that look at how we can integrate them back in the community once they're out of the hospital. Main thing is to try and give people the confidence to stay at home and in the community. Yeah. And then we've got our counselors and chaplains who lend that listening ear, because it's once you've got that, you know, you address the emotional issues, people are in a better place to to look at the care for themselves. And that really helps move them along that journey of care.
Dr. Eastman, I just want to bring the conversation back to you and just get some international perspective from you. You've seen how it works in Singapore. How does it compare with how other models work in other parts of the world?
Singapore is providing, through St. Luke's, cutting-edge training. I mean, compassionate care has really only been around for a few years since the World Health Organization announced it as something that they wanted to promote. So there are organizational clusters forming compassionate communities, compassionate cities throughout the world. But primarily, right now, because it is so new, training is the most essential component. And the way that they were providing this training today and their healthcare workers, what they received, that is definitely cutting edge. Because it's challenging the traditional way we were taught how to provide healthcare. We were taught to distance. We were taught to compartmentalize. But this training says the opposite. And what's wonderful is the research bears out that that provides better outcomes for the patients, but also better well-being for the provider.
Right. It's very much about staying open and open to observing and feeling exactly, because you're in this community, really. When you're in a hospital setting, there are plenty of walls and functions and so on, but it needs to work together.
Yes.
So would you say everybody plays a part here? The patients play a part, the staff plays a part?
Yes. One of the things that happens in a compassionate connection is trust. And when trust happens, patients are more likely to follow through. They're more compliant. They're better at taking care of themselves. And one of the things I want to say to the patients is be your own advocate. Don't be afraid to tell your provider what you need, what you want, because compassionate care dictates that. It's a two-way conversation. It's active listening.
Okay. And Kelvin, just to briefly wrap up this conversation, where do you think Singapore is at in terms of compassionate care? And is there a gold standard that we want to achieve?
Gold standard. And like I said, it varies, between institutions. But I think you're beginning to see more people look into this area if today's attendance at the conference was anything to go by. And there's this buzz about how, we can then come together and talk more about this in the years ahead. And it's really about holding that space so that there'll be this commitment to extend compassionate care. And that's care to the staff and, then to patients and carers. So I think that commitment to want to do this is important. The training that Katie talked about, I think that's something we need to put resources to. And so we can build this culture of openness. Once we establish that trust between workers, between patients and caregivers, I think that's going to bring us a lot further in this journey of care.
We wish you the very best in this journey of compassionate care. Thank you very much, both of you, for coming into the studios and talking to us about this important topic. Kelvin Lee there from St. Luke's Hospital and Dr. Katie Eastman from the Antioch